I'm the last speaker, so please bear with me because I know better things are waiting for you. Dr. Majumdar, Dr. Vidya, my distinguished panelists, a very distinguished audience, colleagues in the teaching faculty, and my dear students. I'm going to speak, obviously, from the lens of education. And in today's world, it is the world of knowledge society. So whichever country is a leader in knowledge is going to have the leadership of the world in the Committee of Nations. And if India has to emerge as a global leader, it must improve, strengthen, and upgrade its education, which has already emerged as one of the good education providers, but it must certainly do more. Thanks to the vision after independence, we established a lot of good institutions in various fields of science, technology, agriculture, medical, liberal education, which has only grown. But the fact that many developing countries look to India to provide them with education and skill development was understood immediately after independence also, and my colleague from ICCR is here. That was one of the vision statements of ICCR. The first Education Commission, also known as the Kothari Commission, also emphasized that knowledge is international and there should be no barriers to obtaining it from anywhere in the world. But India cannot just keep obtaining knowledge. India must also go out and disseminate knowledge. I think while cultural diplomacy is talked about, educational diplomacy is not particularly well understood. Ministry of External Affairs understands a lot of it, but I think a lot more needs to be done to make the Ministry of Human Resource Development understand it, and certainly our public sector universities have to understand it far better than what they do today. Now, India has provided educational support to newly independent countries of Africa. Far more needs to be done. India sent its teachers even before independence to then Burma, now Myanmar, Fiji, East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. All this made a very good base. However, this base was not really built upon. Then you have the diaspora that my friend, Mr. Mahin talked about. And many of them came back, people of Indian origin, to India to study. I myself did a book on internationalization of higher education as an aspect of India's external relations. And I went and met people in Malaysia, in Fiji, in Thailand. And yes, they have a strong emotional attachment to India. But I think as India has grown and as India's educational needs grown, it has become more inward-looking. And Symbiosis is an exception. Most public sector universities are really not open. The faculty has to get more open to accepting foreign students. Festivals of India were mentioned. Yes, they do serve a certain purpose, but unless followed up with educational instruments and policies, they have a short-lived effect, and they often emphasize or they shore up the image of an exotic India rather than India as we should know it. ICCR, I had spent some time on, I will not do so now. But one comment, that ICCR also had a lot of educational programs. They still have a lot of, or increased number of scholarships from developing countries, but they need to be strengthened. They need to be not spread so thin. They need to have a decent living wage when students come to India, and they should reach in time for the educational year when they open. Having administered a college, a leading college in Delhi University, I know many of the ICCR people only landed up in September, October, when the university begins in July. Now that is not advisable. So many scholarships have been done, and of course, Bhutanese students come here for medicine, engineering, law, nursing, agriculture, dentistry, and others. Then there are iTech programs, there are Colombo Plan programs, which most of you know about. In fact, we were talking about iTech yesterday. iTech is one of the more appreciated programs because it provides knowledge which is suitable for the developing countries and which can be used and adapted by developing countries rather than solutions which are provided by developed countries which may not be useful for application in the countries when these people go back to. Now, talking from the lens of education, and that's why I say our universities and our faculty is not ready for it, which we need to be. If I look at this, then right from now it's about 20 years, no more than that, 1995 or 96, these studies started on internationalization of higher education, and we are into 2016. The National University of Education Planning and Administration did a study in 2004 and talked about the challenges of Indian education in terms of quality, modes of supply, access and equity, responses to GATS framework and the WTO framework, matters pertaining to identity, culture, curriculum, and other concerns that nations receiving foreign students have to deal with. The Association of Indian Universities held its first conference in 2001 in Mysore and grandly called it the Mysore Declaration. Then in 2002, it was followed up by a conference in Amritsar, Guru Nanak Dev University. The recommendations of neither of these roundtables have been followed up. Then in 10th plan, India said, UGC said, internationalization of higher education will be one of its thrust areas and projected a vision of promoting Indian higher education abroad. A committee was set up known as PIHED, Promotion of Indian Higher Education Abroad. And of course, the UGC identified several countries to target to attract international students, which were largely based on linkages. However, I find that whenever we talk of internationalization of higher education, most Indians think of US, which is, I think, a very short-sighted vision. Anyway, the areas that were identified were training systems, skill gaps, programs offered in different fields of education. PIHED emphasized globalization in the 21st century, and because of which integration of societies was taking place, because of which it was necessary for us to know each other, and also emphasized the low cost of Indian education, and that how English as a medium of instruction and how it has emerged as one of the better educational quality that was here compared to many in the developing countries. However, it was found that instead of increasing, the number of foreign students was decreasing. Now, this is another problem, that we don't have any figures, accurate figures on how many foreign students there are. I remember running the length and breadth of the country trying to, that is when I first met Dr. Vidya, trying to find out how many students there are in various places and which subjects are they studying and what is their feedback on it. Even advanced countries like USA, UK, Canada, Australia were promoting higher education, but in our universities such a promotion and laying of the ground was not taking place. One of our constraints, which I often keep talking about, is this business of, I know the quarrel between state subject and central subject, and now being in the concurrent list, but the problem is that our universities, the bulk of the education takes place in state universities, and they have jurisdictional areas in which they can operate. Now, what happens with that is that it runs like a local college. And although technically the medium of instruction is English, but a lot of it happens in the local language. And people don't live to don't learn to live with each other. If within the country Indians don't learn to live with each other, how can you plant foreign students in these universities? Anyway, PIHEAD had a lot of recommendations. It also recommended a consortium for international education because someone has to oversee it, someone has to coordinate all these universities, someone has to coordinate the missions, someone, so all those issues are there. And of course, when the foreign students come into most of our universities, I have hands-on experience of that. Nobody is even willing to give them an introduction to open a bank account. So when as principal of Hindu College used to say, I know all of them, they are all my children, I'll give you introductions to bank accounts. Nobody gives them even a map, something as simple as all that. In Delhi, for example, where are you? What are the clinics, medical clinics around you? What are the eating spaces around you? Where should you go? How much would it cost? What's the mode of transport? All these are very simple things which we don't do to facilitate our students. Now, I will, as I said, the number of students is quite unknown. I did a survey in 2007, 2008, and what were the leading institutions? Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Bangalore University, University of Pune, University of Delhi, Bharati Vidyapeeth, Symbiosis, University of Mysore, CMR institutions in Bangalore, and the number of public funded universities was not very high. What are the roadblocks? The roadblocks are many. One is that paucity of institutions, higher education institutions for our own purposes, lack of resources, lack of academic infrastructure, whatever resources we have. If you see our public sector universities, their campuses, their hostels, well, it requires a lot more. In the field of external relations, I now head the SAARC University, or South Asian University, I don't want to call it the SAARC University, the South Asian University, which is a very courageous vision. And if it can happen in the course of, universities don't get established in 4 or 5 years, if it can happen in the course of 10, 15 years, we would have done a great job for this, for this region. However, there are many, many roadblocks. Nepal and Bhutan, in any case, enjoy a special status for us. And again, when I was in Delhi University, there used to be always a tangle. They are supposed to have 5% less. They can be, eligibility is 5% less than the eligibility criteria in Delhi University. So they would say if Hindu college has 90%, they should have 85%. I said, no, then you are trying not to admit anybody at all. It's 40%, so they can have it at 35%. Anyway, Sri Lanka, we need to step up our role on higher education collaboration with Sri Lanka, which brings me to Buddhist studies. My colleague here had talked about Buddhist studies. Now, our Buddhist studies, there's only one center, which is in Varanasi, but our Buddhist studies departments need far more strengthening up. They really need to be galvanized. I don't want to go into it. I have seen enough Buddhist study departments. There is no teaching of comparative religion. Our philosophy departments have very little component of Indian philosophy in it. But that's what the world is looking at. I mean, we are supposed to have that as one of our core strengths, but we don't seem to teach it at all. Now, India has very little links with its neighbors. We know very little about the education systems, even of our neighbors, and of course very little about the world at large. We seem to know only UK and USA. So we need to do, which I keep saying, a comparative education journal. We need to have comparative education research and comparative education departments. Afghanistan, we are already helping out a lot, and I was quite surprised that President Hamid Karzai had actually studied in Himachal University, and he had some very fond memories of that university. India had formulated its, I'm just bullet pointing now, India had formulated its Look East policy, and ASEAN countries were part of it, and we had students coming from Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, these countries, but I want you to know that Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong, These are three countries that took a considered decision, and I don't want to go into details, to create their countries as educational hubs, that they would be the education providers, and they have succeeded a lot. There is also a lot of collaboration now between South Korea, Japan, and China, and they are succeeding. SAARC remains problematic. I think we still need a lot more in terms of collaboration in different fronts. Thailand, again, has civilizational linkages. People of Indian origin in Thailand, look at us. Shivnath Rai Bajaj, someone mentioned Thammasat University, had started an India center there. He gave 1 million baht of his own to start that center. As I said, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, again, cultural linkages, wanting to have students here. Many students have started coming in the field of management from Vietnam. I know ICCR gives many scholarships to these students. IT education is something they all look forward to from India, and NIIT was among the first groups to go to Vietnam. Central Asia is another region which has strong links, but you go to Indian universities, they know little or nothing out of Central Asia. And they don't study it with any great degree of depth at all. When you come to the western part of Asia, again, Gulf countries, students from Iran, many of them come here, but they face their own problems. And again, I think those who have had Iranian students know that they have all kinds of issues when they come here. One of the recommendations of the PI head and of UGC was that we must develop special education zones. This was also the recommendation of the report of the high-level committee. This has again not happened. But Dubai has a knowledge city, and I went to Dubai to have a look at it. BITS Pilani, Mahatma Gandhi Institute, and Manipal Academy, at least I found there. And it's amazing that we have Indian institutions, Indian teachers, many Indian students, and they are paying international prices for getting that education. So, again, African countries, we have given some support, but I think we must give far more support. And Jawaharlal Nehru, our architect of our foreign policy, had emphasized the ties to Africa. But human resource remains a major constraint in Africa, which we can help with if only we would put our act together. Again, European Union, the Erasmus project is a very good project, but somehow it is not known very much in the Indian universities, and we don't write up research projects for that. Taking a cue from that, but not going full scale ahead, because I can't, but we have within us a think tank planned within the South Asian University called Institute of South Asian Studies. And now I started a program saying that you will do one research project involving at least one other country, if not two other countries, and on a project, on a subject which is of use to all the three countries and which has some applications. But the Erasmus project has not had a very good response. I think the window for India has now closed. It was open for 2 years, and I went to attend a meeting for it, and they said there's nobody who has come forward from India. In US, again, even I did a whole paper once on how many hours did American teachers spend in India and how many hours of training they gave to Indian teachers in USA. A lot of PIL money was spent on opening educational institutions right from IITs to ITIs and agricultural universities and so on and so forth. And that's what kept our relationship alive even when it was at a low ebb. Now, after 9/11, many people who could have felt comfortable in US are not comfortable there, and that is an opportunity for countries like India. The way forward, we need to sensitize universities. I think Ministry of External Affairs, which does understand it, must take outreach programs to universities and rope in HRD and other universities to participate in it. yes, there will be a resource crunch. This is what we constantly say. We cannot do education here in India in a large scale for foreign students because there will be a resource crunch. Well, there's a resource crunch for everything, yet we give aid, yet we invest in projects which are not of immediate need or necessity for us. So I don't know why this is just sort of brought out in terms of education. And if it is accepted that education is significant for our foreign policy, then we will find the resources to do it, and we must find the way to sensitize it, whether by sending mid-level faculty outside and getting exchange, but mid-level and senior level faculty must go outside, because without faculty, this will not be put into place. Thank you very much.